Happy Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. We will focus on tone and language register so that we can think about our writing and also how we speak to people. And that's something to really think about because to be successful, you kind of have to learn how to talk to people the way that they want you to talk to them. So that's important. And then, as every day, right, we will do the work now. And I will become aware of how changes in tone and register can affect your audience. And it all depends who you're talking to, right? If you're talking to the guys in the locker room after practice, you're going to talk very differently than if you're talking with your mom or with your grandmother. It's just the way things are. So you learn how to switch how you speak, the words you use, depending on who you're talking to. And it's true in your writing as well. For our close, well, we're going to be looking at a blog, a blog entry, and I want you to be thinking about credibility because that seems the thing that people kind of skip over or don't think about the most. And it's important when you're doing research to pay attention to these things. So after we've read, well, what raises or lowers the credibility of the blog post we read? And once again, it is not going to affect your grade if the credibility is not very high. What is going to affect your grade if you don't really give details about the credibility? So keep that in mind. Like from yesterday, right? When we're talking about credibility, we're talking about the currency. How recent is it? When did it come out? If it's more than a few years old, that could lower the credibility, right? What kind of a website? .gov, .edu, .org, .com, or .net? Somebody mentioned. What about .net? That's the same as .com, basically. Who's the author? Is the author, known for just giving information? But if they're very focused on trying to sell something or prove a point, that could affect their credibility, right? The web page, you can look into that too. Who's running the web page and what kind of person are they? You can Google that to find out. And then peer-reviewed, references, bibliography. If they have references or bibliography, that very much raises the credibility if it's peer-reviewed as well. So keep that in mind. Okay, so before we do anything else, let's do our positive affirmations. Let's tell ourselves what to think and how to think so we can have that success. Say them with me, either in your head or out loud. What are you? I am strong, confident, and successful. Yes, we are. And how do you feel about reading? I love reading. It's so much fun. And the better you get at it, the more true that becomes, right? And how do I feel about schoolwork? The harder I work, the stronger I become. Amen. And of course, got to do a little comedy. So I don't know who these people are, but I thought this was funny. I saw a moose on the way to work this morning. How do you know he was on his way to work? Yeah, that's hilarious. So anyway, that's just Carvajal's crazy humor. Hope you all thought that was funny, and if not, that's okay. Proud of you for suffering. All right, so let's just get to it. And like I mentioned earlier, who you are talking to determines how you talk. And some of us kind of get into that attitude of, well, I ain't going to put on a show for nobody. Why not? Why wouldn't you? If it's your boss, if it's your teacher, if it's somebody that you respect, or if it's somebody that thinks you should respect them, that's part of what you do. And a lot of times, oh, well, I'm just me. I had lots of friends like that in the grocery business. I'm just me. I ain't gonna act special for them. And then they're surprised when they didn't get the raise, they didn't get the promotion. And I got lots of raises and promotions. I was quick because I'm really good at talking to people. I'm really good at mirroring people the way they talk. And especially if you want to be in sales, those of you that said you wanted to be entrepreneurs, own your own business, or for those of us that want to go to college, you talk the way people are talking to you and they feel more comfortable with you. So keep that in mind. But let's go ahead and get into this. So this is our discussion question, right, for credibility, the things that we just talked about there. That's what we're going to be looking for. And if you click into Wednesday's work, You'll see this. You don't have to open it right now, but if you want to look at it later, of course you can. We're going to go over this together as a class. Learning, Teaching, and Leadership, a blog for educators, researchers by Sarah Elaine Eaton, PhD. That's the person that wrote it. And says that she's a professor, ethicist, writer, and speaker, strong advocate for academic integrity. I love all kinds of integrity, ethics, and educational contexts. So it's interesting what she has to say. And here's the blog post. Language register and why it matters, or why you can't write an academic paper in gangsta slang. Let's see what she says here. Language register is a level of formality with which you speak. Different situations and people call for different registers. This is a concept I was talking about recently with some of my graduate students who dislike the idea of writing with a formal tone. They were commenting that they prefer to write in a conversational tone. Since our class is about learning to write up their academic research, I countered by saying that a manuscript submitted to a peer-reviewed journal was less likely to receive a favorable response from the editors if the tone was too conversational. It's true in high school too, and it's something to think about. You know, when you turn in work for English, having an academic tone, the language that you use does make a difference, and I probably mentioned that to some of you. Especially in your introduction and conclusion, right? If you're talking about your thesis and your introduction and so forth, that should be academic. Now, in your body paragraph, if you're writing about a personal example when you were 8 years old on the Little League softball team, well, sure, it's going to be less formal because you're talking about something personal like that. But remember, your introduction, you're talking to your reader. Your conclusion, you're talking to your reader. And in the middle, you have more freedom. So keep that in mind. Some were unfamiliar with the concept of language register, so I gave them a quick overview based on Jews's 1967 definition. So the first one is frozen, static register. And we all know this because we all know I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic, right? Whether you say it or not every day, you know it because we have practiced it so many times. Those who are religious, we have certain prayers, and it's different by different religion, of course. But those of us that are Christian or Catholic, we all know the Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And those are just things that you say over and over again, and you learn them because they're practiced and they never change. So keep that in mind. Formal register, and this is what you want to do when you're writing an essay. And of course, I'm talking about a finished essay. You know how I always say, hey, your rough draft, just do it wrong, just get it written. So keep that in mind. That still applies. Anytime you're writing a rough draft, just write. Just get it down on paper. And then we go back and make it fancy and make it pretty. So just be aware of that. The style is impersonal and often follows a prescriptive format, right? Think of a prescription. You're supposed to do things a certain way. The speaker uses complete sentences, right? That's a big deal. I always tell you, don't just tell me yes, use a full sentence. Avoid slang and may use technical or academic vocabulary. It's likely that the speaker will use fewer contractions. And a lot of times, yeah, that's recommended, is to have the complete word. Put have not instead of haven't. Also, same with numbers. In formal writing, you shouldn't put the number 3. You should spell out THREE. But I'm really not that picky. Writing expert Rita Mae Brown might argue that a writer or speaker is more likely to use vocabulary with Latin or Greek roots at its register. You think about Latin and Greek, and those are all the medical and scientific terms. They're all based out of Greek or Latin. They're more upper level, they're more scientific, and that's why they're used more. For example, the writer of a scientific article may be more likely to use the word female as opposed to woman. And Anglo-Saxon roots, they're much more earthy, they're much more direct and in your face. Most of the smaller words, the words that are the 4-letter words, all those words that you could get sent to the office for telling people, those all come from Anglo-Saxon. So if we're talking about Latin and you say sexual intercourse, boy, that's based out of Latin. But if you say the F-bomb, which is supposed to mean the same thing, yeah, that's a good old Anglo-Saxon word. That's where it comes from. So this is definitely less proper, less formal than this is. I thought that was kind of funny. So formal register, that's the register used for most academic and scientific publishing. So if your boss cusses a lot, you may want to copy them and kind of do some of the saying. But if they don't, right, you probably shouldn't be saying a lot of these Anglo-Saxon four-letter words. Consultative register. I hadn't really heard about this, but you think about having a consultation. That's used when consulting with an expert. You're talking to a doctor. The language used is more precise. The speaker is likely to address the expert by the title, such as Doctor or Mr. or Mrs. So some sources say this register is formal. It's pretty much the same as formal, used in conversation. So this would be formal register in writing. This is formal register in talking. You see it too when people go in front of a judge and they try and use the bigger vocabulary words, and that makes me think of that also. Now here's where most of us talk most of the time, right? We're talking to our friends, we're joking, we're just being ourselves, and that's casual register. So it's conversational in tone, language used among friends. Words in general are general rather than technical, and may include some slang and colloquialisms. What up, dude? Right? Stuff like that. Rita Mae Brown, language expert, says that this register is more likely to use words from Anglo-Saxon or Germanic roots. Smaller words, funny words, naughty words. Her book, Starting from Scratch, has an impressive list of English vocabulary words that have Anglo-Saxon or Germanic roots. I wonder if they have a lot of those four-letter words in there. Intimate register. No, that's who you talk to, the closest people to you, right? The things you say to them. And if you say some of those things that people aren't that close to you, yeah, be careful. You might be called up on sexual harassment. So just be aware. Probably don't want to talk that way unless you really know that you're close and comfortable with that person. I thought this was interesting. Why can it be harder for English speakers to understand differences in register? Well, unlike French, Spanish, German, and other languages, English does not have different pronouns for addressing others in different registers. For example, Spanish has usted. Anybody that's taken Spanish 1, right? Usted, ustedes, tú, nosotros, vosotros. There's all these different words that you use depending on who you're speaking to. But in English, it's all just you. But things didn't used to be that way. Modern English just has you, but guess what? Remember thou? Those of us that remember Shakespeare, thou fool, thou knave. Well, you think of thou as fancy and formal, but actually it's the opposite. Thou was informal. You would talk to somebody who was just an average Joe and call him thou, or somebody that was close to you, like Juliet says, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" If she was talking to her mom or to a doctor, somebody important that she respects, she would probably be using you. But since Romeo was like her boyfriend, she said thou. But because we don't use it, we don't see it as informal. We see it as very formal. Thou art a fool. But it's really not. And that was kind of surprising to me. I hadn't really thought about that. So that's basically all that I wanted to focus in on that. And there's a lot more there. But the important thing is really, once again, is reinforcing the whole credibility thing. What makes this blog post more credible, and or what makes this blog post less credible? So be thinking about it and put something in the discussion, and we'll check on it from time to time to see what y'all have come up with. There's a number of things that make it better. There are a number of things that make it worse. And remember, in the context of your English 3 class, you're not going to hurt your grade by telling me it's not a terribly credible source. You're going to hurt your grade by not focusing on the obvious stuff. So just be aware of that for any time you do research. Just say what's so, and you'll be better off. Okay, so for the rest of the class period, some of us have catching up to do, whether in this class or another class. So if you haven't done Research 1 or Research 2, be sure that you do those as soon as possible, because you are strong, confident, and successful. And if you need help with anything, be sure and message me. I may also be messaging some of you and creating breakout rooms so I can talk to you about what you can do to help yourself. Just let me know what you need, and let's get to work so that we can end the weekend, have this 3-week grade check be good, and not have to stress at the end of the semester.